Okay, let's finish up John chapter 12. We're going to begin in verse 37. And just to a little reminder of where we are, Jesus has on Sunday entered into Jerusalem. He teaches the crowds that were there about his death. God even speaks from heaven to the crowds. And at the end, it says, when Jesus finished speaking to all those people, he left and hid himself from them. Then John tells us about the people. It says in verse 37, even after Jesus had done all these miraculous signs in their presence, they still would not believe in him. Now we know that there were a lot of Jews who believed in Jesus. There were the small group of disciples, about 100 or so of them, that believed in Jesus. But, at this point, there's large crowds that believe in Jesus. But we know the group that didn't believe in him was the religious leaders, the chief priests, the priests that served in the temple, the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, the Sadducees. None of these people believed in Jesus. Now, there was a few among them maybe, but for the most part, the people who were the good religious people, who were the leaders in the synagogues and the leaders at the temple, didn't believe in him. And John tells us why. In verse 38, this was to fulfill the word of Isaiah the prophet. Lord, who has believed our message, and to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? This is from Isaiah 53, which is, a true messianic prophecy. All of Isaiah chapter 53 is. But it starts off by saying, who has believed our message? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been revealed? These religious leaders didn't believe. And Isaiah saw it in the future. And he prophesied about it. Isaiah lived 700 or so years before Jesus. And Isaiah knew this was going to happen. And he prophesied that it was going to happen. That there will be people whose hearts were hard and just refused to believe. John tells us in verse 39, for this reason they could not believe, because as Isaiah says elsewhere, he has blinded their eyes and deadened their hearts, so they can neither see with their eyes, nor understand with their hearts, nor turn, and I would heal them. So John says those people that don't believe in Jesus, those Jewish leaders, Isaiah prophesied about it and said that God had blinded their eyes and deadened their hearts so that they couldn't see with their eyes and they couldn't understand with their hearts and they couldn't turn to Jesus. Now, what I've found in my ministry is that God hardens the hearts of people who don't want to believe and who don't want to follow him. People who all their lives say, no, I don't believe in this Jesus. No, I don't want to be a Christian. People's hearts get harder and harder and more calloused, and God lets it happen. And that was the case with these religious leaders. John tells us in verse 41, Isaiah said this because he saw Jesus' glory and spoke about him. And so Isaiah, the prophet, knew about these things and spoke about Jesus. Verse 42, yet at the same time, many, even among the leaders, believed in him. But because of the Pharisees, they wouldn't confess their faith for fear they would be put out of the synagogue. For they loved the praise from men more than the praise from God. And so there were people who believed in Jesus, even amongst the religious leaders. But they wouldn't let people know, they wouldn't tell about it because they were afraid that the Pharisees was going to throw them out of the synagogue. And as we've talked about before, about the young man who had been born blind, he was put out of the synagogue. He was disenfranchised from everyone that he knew, from family, from friends. He wasn't able to have fellowship. He wasn't able to come and worship. He wasn't a part of the community anymore. And that's what people were afraid of. They wouldn't confess their faith in Jesus Christ because they were afraid. And John tells us they loved the praise of men more than the praise of God. And I'm afraid that's often the problem. People are afraid. I don't want to be a Christian. What do people think? I've become one of those holy people. Next thing you know, I'm going to be singing and dancing in church. I don't want people thinking that about me. They love the praise of men more than the praise of God. Verse 44, we don't know what situation we're in here, but John tells us that Jesus cried out, "When a man believes in me, he does not believe in me only, but in the one who sent me. When he looks at me, he sees the one who sent me. I have come into the world as a light, so that no one who believes in me should stay in darkness." Again, we have two themes that run throughout the Gospel of John. Jesus said that if you believe in me, then you believe in the one who sent me. You believe in God the Father. If you've seen me, then you have seen the one who sent me, God the Father. And Jesus over and over again in John's Gospel says that he was sent from God to do the will of God, to say the things that God told him to say. And here he says, I've come into the world to be light, so that you don't have to walk in darkness anymore. Again, this theme of light and darkness. No one who believes in me is going to stay in the darkness. He's talking about spiritual darkness here. Jesus is the way. He's already said that he's the resurrection and the life. Later on, we'll see that he's the way, the truth, and the life. And so he says, if you believe in me, you won't have to walk in darkness. Verse 47, as for the person who hears my words, but does not keep them, I don't judge him. For I didn't come to judge the world, but to save it. There is a judge for the one who rejects me and does not accept my words. That very word which I spoke will condemn them at the last day. For I didn't speak of my own accord, but the Father who sent me commanded me what to say and how to say it. I know that his command leads to eternal life. So whatever I said is just what the Father has told me to say. As far as these people who hear my word and don't do what I say, Jesus said, I'm not going to judge him. The Father will judge him. And he said, my words on the last day, on the judgment day, is going to be what condemns these people because they've rejected my words. And Jesus said, the things that I come and said, they didn't come from me, these words that I speak. They came from the Father who sent me. And I know that his commands lead to eternal life. And I'm just saying what the Father told me to say. And then, again, this theme, Jesus saying, I'm sent from the Father. I'm sent to do what the Father told me to do. I'm sent to say the things the Father told me to say. This finishes out, just chapter 12. What will take chapters in other Gospels to tell about the week that Jesus spent in Jerusalem and interacting with the people and the religious leaders. John finishes it up just in this chapter 12. Beginning in chapter 13, we will transition to the night before his crucifixion and Jesus being in the upper room with his disciples. Okay, we'll stop here. Again, I'd like for you to get me a preaching point, 2 or 3 sentences telling me what you want to say about that one preaching point. Send it to my inbox. Thanks, God bless, and I hope you all have a really nice day.